The PlayStation Showcase for 2023, after nearly 2 years of big PlayStation Showcase absence, was really a big disappointment for me. I'm gonna cover the announcement that I'm interested in from that showcase, and give my final thoughts afterwards. Sony capped off its big PlayStation Showcase event with the first good look at Marvel's Spider-Man 2 gameplay, confirming major new features that will be in the open-world superhero game. Insomniac Games hit it out of the park with its first open-world Spider-Man game, and so expectations are understandably high for the sequel. The Spider-Man 2 reveal trailer confirmed precious little about the new game beyond that it would feature Peter Parker and Miles Morales teaming up together against Venom. The new Spider-Man 2 gameplay footage gives fans a lot more to chew on. The footage begins by setting up the Spider-Man 2 story. As theorized, the game will be about Kraven the Hunter making his way to New York. Kraven and his goons are hunting down the Lizard, aka Kurt Connors, putting them in direct conflict with Spider-Man. Harry Osborn is on the brink of death, and it seems the only person that can save him is Connors. So even though the Lizard is going on a rampage, Peter Parker and Miles Morales are trying to save him from Kraven. The gameplay trailer was lengthy, showing a full sequence in the game that began with Peter Parker fighting Kraven's goons in the suburbs of Queens. Parker is now rocking the symbiote suit, which gives him access to a new suite of powers that weren't available in the original game. Peter makes quick work of the hunters, and then the option appears to swap immediately to Miles in Harlem. This confirms the theory that Spider-Man 2 would have a GTA 5 style character swapping mechanic. The Miles section of gameplay sees him come face to face with the Lizard, and eventually he and Peter regroup and team up. Notably, Miles and Peter both have web wings, something that was hinted at in the recent Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse trailer. Ultimately, the Spider-Man 2 gameplay trailer ends with the Lizard getting away and Peter in pursuit. Miles notices that Peter appears to have a far more aggressive personality than usual, suggesting that the symbiote suit is already having an adverse effect on his personality. Spider-Man 2's main villain is Kraven the Hunter, a character that newer Spider-Man fans may not be totally familiar with. Kraven the Hunter has been featured in the Spider-Man comic books for decades, and he's also made appearances on various Spider-Man animated series. However, it's safe to say that the majority of casual fans are most familiar with the villains that have appeared in live-action Spider-Man movies and the Insomniac video game. Those individuals may have no clue who Kraven the Hunter is, as he has yet to make his live-action film debut and wasn't in the 2018 Spider-Man game. Kraven the Hunter is a Russian big game hunter who enhances himself with a potion that gives him the strength to go toe-to-toe with superpowered beings, primarily Spider-Man. Kraven first appeared in The Amazing Spider-Man number 15 all the way back in 1964, making him one of the earliest villains featured in Spider-Man's Rogues Gallery. Kraven has had many encounters with Spider-Man, usually solo, but he was notably a founding member of the Sinister Six. The most famous Spider-Man story featuring Kraven the Hunter is easily Kraven's Last Hunt, which sees him drug Spider-Man, bury him alive, and then take on the mantle of Spider-Man himself to prove that he could do a better job at being a superhero. After Kraven succeeds in his plan, he lets Spider-Man go and then decides to kill himself. It's possible this storyline will be featured in the Spider-Man 2 game, but the Kraven featured in Kraven's Last Hunt is much older and defeated after so many failed run-ins with Spider-Man, whereas the Kraven in Spider-Man 2 is arriving to New York for the first time. The Spider-Man 2 story trailer featured at the recent PlayStation Showcase showed Kraven hunting down and killing a man in the jungle, but he's seemingly bored by the whole thing and is hungry for a challenge. That's when his goons let him know about all the superpowered people concentrated in New York City, and so Kraven decides to make the Big Apple his new hunting grounds. More specifically, he seems to be hunting down the Lizard, which puts him in direct conflict with both Peter Parker and Miles Morales. Presumably, Kraven's plans are going to get spoiled enough that he will then turn his full attention to taking out both Spider-Men, but it seems he will be focused on the Lizard in the game's earlier hours. The Spider-Man 2 gameplay reveal from the PlayStation Showcase showed Peter Parker in his infamous symbiote suit. It appears that, at some point, Peter will lose the symbiote suit, and it will combine with someone else to create Venom, though the jury is still out on who exactly Venom will be in Spider-Man 2. It's possible Venom will be Eddie Brock just like in the comic books, but it's also possible that Insomniac will be looking to introduce a different character as Venom. For now, it seems clear that Kraven the Hunter is being positioned as the main villain, with his exploits eventually leading to confrontations with the Lizard and Venom as well. Spider-Man 2 is clearly going to have no shortage of villains, and considering how great Dr. Octopus' character is, it will be exciting to see what the studio manages to pull off with Kraven the Hunter and the other bad guys appearing in the sequel. After a brief intro sequence that sets up Kraven the Hunter and his general motivations, Marvel Spider-Man 2's gameplay reveal trailer takes fans to a quiet Queens suburb. As Kraven's henchmen surround a building that's supposedly housing the Lizard, Peter Park leaps out of the basement, ambushing the soldiers, and wearing the symbiote suit, its tendrils quickly wrapping themselves around him. From here, Marvel Spider-Man 2's trailer transitions into actual gameplay, and Peter kicks things off by using one of his brand new symbiote abilities. Seemingly activated by holding down L1 and pressing one of the face buttons, Spidey charges his arm back for a second or two, and pushes it forward, launching a collection of tendrils forward into two henchmen, knocking one of them to the ground and sticking the other to a vehicle. After a quick web pull, Spidey then launches into another new symbiote ability, this one propelling him into the air, dashing towards a group of soldiers, and launching them upward, opening them up to further combos. It seems as though symbiote suit Spidey also has some unique finishers when using the new suit. After brutally slamming an opponent into the pavement below, Spider-Man uses his tendril arm again to pummel his enemy in the face, and throw them back into the ground. A second finisher can be seen just a few seconds later, with Spidey again using his huge tendril arm to grab a henchman and thrust them into the concrete mercilessly. Just a moment later, Spidey uses his symbiote tendrils to create a shield in front of himself, blocking an oncoming attack, and countering with a brutal kick to the gut. With reinforcements arriving, Spider-Man gets the opportunity to pull out yet another new trick, with this ability allowing him to grab 4 enemies at once with his tendrils, lift them into the air, and slam them back down again, knocking out each one instantly. Currently, those symbiote abilities are the only ones confirmed for Marvel Spider-Man 2 so far, though there is one icon on the HUD that wasn't used during the trailer, presumably confirming the existence of at least one other main symbiote ability. For the most part, it seems as though Marvel Spider-Man 2's symbiote suit is following in the footsteps of its past inspirations. Its symbiote abilities look very similar to those depicted in past Spider-Man games, TV shows, and movies. It was confirmed by Insomniac's senior community manager that Spider-Man 2 will have a skill tree specific to Peter Parker, a skill tree specific to Miles Morales, and a skill tree governing abilities that the two characters share. This means that there will effectively be 3 skill trees in Spider-Man 2. However, there remains one big unanswered question about how skills will work in the Spider-Man 2 endgame. Presumably, the Spider-Man 2 game will eventually see Peter Parker lose the symbiote suit. The footage shown so far already shows his personality darkening from it, and it's likely that it will eventually bond with someone else and become Venom. When Peter loses the symbiote suit, it would stand to reason that Spider-Man 2 players will lose access to those power. While Venom is being positioned as a villain, perhaps he will become the anti-hero type character by the end of Spider-Man 2's story. This way Spider-Man 2 players could keep all the symbiote-specific upgrades that they purchased in Peter's skill tree and still enjoy the powers associated with the symbiote suit. Very reminiscent of the Arkham series and its combat, the player can be seen inflicting heavy and potentially fatal blows on enemies, whilst also giving off a menacing presence unlike his usual self due to the symbiote. Insomniac Games creative director Brian Intihar spoke more about the size of the upcoming title in a recent interview with the Japanese media outlet Famitsu. According to him, Queens and Brooklyn will be added as new explorable areas to Marvel's Spider-Man 2. This change will roughly increase the size of the playable map by twice, as Manhattan will remain playable. These 2 new areas are mostly residential and won't feature as many skyscrapers as Manhattan does, so they will offer a fairly different gameplay experience when visiting them, and will also have a different charm, Intihar explained. In a recent interview with Eurogamer, Spider-Man 2 creative director Brian Intihar explained that the game's story will shift between Spider-Man during set moments. However, players will also get to switch heroes at will while exploring the open world of New York City, with certain side quests and other content being specifically crafted for either Peter or Miles. Intihar also noted that this character switching will tie into Spider-Man 2's 3 distinct skill trees, which offer symbiote-enhanced powers for Peter, electric venom blast abilities for Miles, and a standard set of spider skills that both web-slingers share. He says that his team wanted to give players a sense of familiarity while alternating between the two Spideys while allowing for flexibility in upgrading their movesets. When asked if Spider-Man 2 will feature sections with other characters like Marvel's Spider-Man's Mary Jane segments, Intihar declined to comment. Spider-Man 2 will allow players to swap between both Peter Parker and Miles Morales, and so has a skill tree system built around that. Spider-Man 2 game director Ryan Smith spoke on the subject in a recent interview with Eurogamer. Smith says that both Peter Parker and Miles Morales will have their own skill tree, and a third will be shared between the two. Smith says this is so that there's a sense of familiarity even when switching between Parker and Morales. According to Smith, Peter Parker's skill tree in Spider-Man May 2nd be dramatically different than in the original Spider-Man. Those who viewed the recent Spider-Man 2 gameplay trailer from the PlayStation Showcase will understand why. Parker's skill tree will focus on his symbiote abilities. Abilities shown in the trailer include a long-range punch that sticks an enemy to a wall, a dash that captures multiple enemies in goo and launches them in the air, and another that grabs multiple enemies and slams them onto the ground. When comparing these abilities to the first Spider-Man game from Insomniac, there's a clear difference. Stylistically, the abilities are all much more explosive and violent. Parker can summon arms, tendrils, and more to launch at enemies, which combo into direct attacks or CC. Parker's original skill tree largely focused on individual targets, disarming or distracting enemies, resource management, and utilizing one's environment. In Spider-Man 2, Parker's goal seems more oriented toward grouping up enemies and demolishing them with destructive combinations. Miles Morales, on the other hand, is not going through the same reinvention that Peter Parker is. He is growing more aware of his own powers, however. That's why Smith describes Morales' new skill tree as featuring evolved venom powers. We see these in action in the trailer. Morales is able to stealth one-shot robotic drones, teleport a short distance and explode in a disorienting electrical storm, and stun foes mid-air with a shocking blast that can also stream out to other foes nearby. The skill trees in the Spider-Man Miles Morales game did also include a venom tree. This tree focused on Morales' ability to stun foes with venom, either through a venom smash attack or with jumps and dashes. The new venom abilities appear to have much larger and more impactful results. The venom smash looks like it returns, but now Morales can teleport and even shoot electricity out into groups of enemies. The third skill tree for Spider-Man 2 is said to be shared between both Peter Parker and Miles Morales. This tree will likely deal with more general Spider-Man abilities. Perhaps the gliding ability that Morales does while traversing the city is included in this, or the ability to create webbing lines freely while looking for stealth takedowns. What's clear here is that Insomniac is building on the abilities players already know from previous games, rather than taking away. Both Parker and Morales have abilities to deal damage to groups and to counter powerful foes. Perhaps that means more enemies on screen, and more powerful enemies, at that. Insomniac Games appears to be changing combat so that it is more akin to titles such as Batman Arkham City and Spider-Man Web of Shadows. While this may only be aligned with the use of the symbiote suit, it is an exciting sign regardless. Based on Marvel's Spider-Man 2's first gameplay trailer, it seems as though the series' traversal mechanics are getting some much-needed upgrades. 2018's Marvel's Spider-Man was an incredible game, capturing the feeling of being Spider-Man just as well as Batman Arkham captured the essence of its own namesake. A big reason behind this is the game's fluid traversal mechanics, letting players swing through New York City with ease, zipping between buildings and launching off rooftops to their heart's content. But while Marvel's Spider-Man's web swinging felt great in the moment, it's aged a little over the last few years, and for some fans, it started to feel just a tad too slow. Well, it seems as though Insomniac has listened to its fans here, with Marvel's Spider-Man 2 seemingly improving on the series' traversal mechanics in a few big ways. After a brief introduction to Kraven the Hunter, and a thrilling combat sequence with the symbiote-suited Peter Parker, Marvel's Spider-Man 2's gameplay trailer swaps perspectives to Miles Morales, who seems a little more seasoned this time around. In addition to the increased speed of web swinging, Insomniac Games has taken traversal up by another notch through the addition of a wingsuit for both Peter and Miles presumably. This mechanic will be incredibly crucial to the manner in which players will be able to advance through the newly added regions in the sequel. And the wingsuit could play a significant role in pivotal traversal sections during story-driven scenarios. This could also be a newly added mechanic that could be enhanced along the way through leveling up, extending the game's playtime and replayability. Not only is this impressive in the manner of gameplay and how it massively improves it, but the potential of this working flawlessly in the aspect of performance, and the increase in graphical fidelity, is definitely something to watch out for. Marvel Spider-Man 2's improvements to its predecessor's traversal mechanics can be seen almost immediately, with Miles quickly utilizing a brand new move called the Super Slingshot. Similar to past Spider-Man games, this Super Slingshot move sees Spider-Man web onto two parallel poles, pull himself back, and use the resulting force to propel him through the sky. While players could slingshot off buildings in Spider-Man and Miles Morales, that's nothing compared to the sheer speed this Super Slingshot seems to give players in Marvel's Spider-Man 2. Once in the air, Miles uses another new traversal technique, this time being a fully fledged wingsuit, allowing him to glide between buildings at a fairly fast pace. Miles then enters a form of wind tunnel between buildings, making him glide even faster through New York. One final interesting detail can be seen when Peter's Spider-Man takes the spotlight again, when he uses his own wingsuit to glide into a suspended train carriage, perhaps hinting at the inclusion of more environmental interactions this time around. Based just on what's been revealed so far, it seems as though Insomniac has really listened to fan feedback when it comes to Marvel's Spider-Man 2's traversal. One final interesting detail can be seen when Peter's Spider-Man takes the spotlight again, when he uses his own wingsuit to glide into a suspended train carriage, perhaps hinting at the inclusion of more environmental interactions this time around. Based just on what's been revealed so far, it seems as though Insomniac has really listened to fan feedback when it comes to Marvel's Spider-Man 2's traversal. While the identity of Venom and his place in the story hadn't been confirmed at all by Insomniac, many fans just presumed that Harry Osborn would be this universe's Venom. At the end of both Spider-Man 2018 and Miles Morales, Harry Osborn is seen floating in a tank, filled with green liquid and some kind of black ooze. This black ooze wraps around Harry's body, and seems to move independently, looking and behaving exactly like a symbiote. Of course, a black symbiote is often associated with Venom in the Spider-Man comics, animated shows, and past movies, so fans naturally assumed that Harry would become Venom's host in Marvel's Spider-Man 2. Norman Osborn is reassuring his son Harry that he will find a cure to his defect, and a fleeting shot of a black substance emitting from Harry's body flashed on screen, which looked eerily similar to the symbiote. But the first Marvel Spider-Man 2 gameplay trailer seems to throw a spanner in this theory. Right from the get-go, Peter Parker is shown to wield the symbiote suit, using it to unleash a flurry of brutal new attacks on Kraven the Hunter's henchmen. While this mission's place in the overarching Marvel Spider-Man 2 story hasn't been confirmed, it seems safe to assume that it doesn't come too far into the game. And it seems like this is the first time Peter Parker has worn the symbiote suit in front of others as Miles questions it upon their first meeting in the trailer. Peter also exclaims during the chase that they need to find the lizard since Dr. Connors is the only one able to cure Harry. Taking these little story tidbits into account, it seems safe to assume that Peter has already come into contact with Harry earlier in the game, and somehow, the symbiote on Harry has transferred itself to Peter. Miles Morales at the Science Museum confirms that Oscorp went into space and had spacecrafts, and this way the symbiote could have come to Earth. If this is the case, then Harry Osborn might not end up being Venom in Marvel Spider-Man 2 after all, or at least, not after his first introduction. In fact, Harry Osborn becoming Venom may have been a red herring this whole time. With other personalities like Dr. Otto Octavius, Aunt May, MJ, and Miles Morales taking center stage in the first Marvel Spider-Man game. Spider-Man 2 has the opportunity to bring in new people while giving existing ones time to shine. Norman Osborn plays a minor but memorable role in the 2018 story, and Harry is mentioned a few times. Most notably in a main mission titled Harry's Passion Project that introduces the player to some research labs that can be tracked down all over the city. It's a smart way to keep Harry's presence in the game's world, but that won't be enough in 2023, as he is so iconic and intertwined with Spider-Man lore to stay away for too long. There are also several story teases for Wraith, Shocker and other villains, which will be very interesting to explore. Not too long after the PlayStation Showcase aired, Insomniac took to Twitter to thank players for their positive responses to the new Spider-Man 2 footage. The developer also assured fans that more information will be revealed soon, including Spider-Man 2's release date, pre-order bonuses, and accessibility features. So far, Spider-Man 2 has only been slated to launch sometime in fall 2023, which was reinforced at the end of yesterday's trailer. A few months ago, Marvel's Spider-Man 2 voice actor Tony Todd, who will play Venom, claimed that the game would be released in September following an extensive summer marketing campaign. While many fans are eager to learn Spider-Man 2's release date, it's possible Insomniac Games hit it right under their noses. In the Spider-Man 2 trailer, when Peter lands on an enemy vehicle and fans see the game switch from him to Miles Morales, there is a sequence very faintly on display on the Hummer. It's there, however faint, and reads 201123. This easily translates to November 20, 2023, but it does raise more questions than it potentially answers though. First, it seems strange to hide a release date in the trailer to begin with, especially if there is a more elaborate marketing tactic Sony was planning for the title. Secondly, because Insomniac Games studios are based in North Carolina and California, it would be odd for said hidden release date to be in British, or non-American, formatting, with the date first and the month second. There could be a simple explanation for that, of course, but it's still strange. At the same time, most video games release on a Tuesday or a Friday, but November 20th is a Wednesday. It's another area that could be waved off, as God of War Ragnarok was released on a Wednesday, but nonetheless, it's an interesting sequence with a lot of potential caveats. It isn't clear when Insomniac plans to unveil new information about Spider-Man 2, but a prime opportunity could come during the Summer Game Fest next month, as parent company PlayStation is confirmed for the event. Whenever it may happen, Insomniac is assuring eager fans that they might not have to wait too much longer to find out when Marvel's Spider-Man 2 will finally swing onto the PlayStation 5. I personally have some gripes with the graphical fidelity of Part 2, and felt like it was not on par with Horizon Forbidden West, a cross-gen game. Maybe Guerrilla has the superior tech. I am impressed with the gameplay, and some set pieces look good, but definitely need a focus on the graphical side when the final version arrives. PlayStation Showcase was a bit of a mixed bag overall. With PlayStation's future lineup being a tad unclear, it was more important than ever for PlayStation's Summer Showcase to hit big and make its mark on the industry. Unfortunately, it didn't quite live up to those lofty expectations. While there was still a handful of exciting announcements, like the confirmation that Metal Gear Solid 3 is getting a remake, the first look at Marvel's Spider-Man 2's gameplay, and a marathon revival from Bungie, PlayStation's showcase felt a little lackluster. Still, its first reveal, Fairgames, was an interesting way to kick things off. While it may not have been the most exciting way to start off a PlayStation showcase, Fairgames did set the tone for a lot of the event, showing that online multiplayer games were going to be a big focus of the showcase. A brand new IP from the studio Haven, Fairgames sees teams of robbers face off against each other in an attempt to all loot the same vault. Naturally, Fairgames was immediately compared to another heist-centric franchise, Payday, but it might have beaten it to the punch. Fairgames seems to be the latest co-op heist game inspired by Payday, and it may have a slight edge over it. While Payday 3 will presumably be another 4-player co-op game where players are set against AI, Fairgames pits its players against fellow heisters, all fighting for the same loot. So while Fairgames can't avoid its Payday comparisons, its competitive nature should give it a much-needed edge over the competition, and that edge could end up knocking the wind out of Payday 3's sails. Fairgames has been described by developers as a thrilling competitive heist game, which perhaps puts it more in line with Payday than anything. While this may be true when it comes to gameplay and progression, the themes of overarching corruption and pulling back the curtain to expose the truth are all things that are reminiscent of Watch Dogs. Payday 3 is on the way, and Fairgames could be a closer competitor to it than anything that Ubisoft has planned for Watch Dogs. The instant tone of the trailer at the PlayStation Showcase still felt similar to the latter. Story matters in games today, and though Fairgames may not put the narrative at the forefront, the fundamental thread of exposing a corrupt higher power is interesting. DedSec in Watch Dogs was a compelling bunch simply because its ideals were fun for players to contribute towards, and Fairgames seems to deploy that idea once again. The audio flourishes in the trailer also give vibes so reminiscent of Ubisoft's property that it's hard to ignore the resemblance. Though there were glimpses of hope that Watch Dogs could become the product that was promised way back in the early 2010s, the reality is that it didn't live up to the hype. The 2014 original was a shell of what was expected. While Marcus Adventure in San Francisco was a commendable effort that had its redeeming qualities, not least the superb recreation of the city, it could not steady the ship. When Watch Dogs Legion came and went with a whimper, its place in Ubisoft's catalog of future titles was put into question. There are rumors that Watch Dogs has retired for good, and though this is a shame as it has a lot of potential, it's perhaps not a surprise given its trajectory. Watch Dogs Legion needed to be a hit, and it failed to leave a lasting impression in a year when there were so many other great AAA third-person action games like Ghost of Tsushima, Final Fantasy VII Remake and The Last of Us II. Though all may have felt lost, Fairgames could be the key to reinvigorating the idea that some may have assumed would die with Watch Dogs. More information needs to be revealed to be sure, but the Haven Studios developed project shows signs that there could be life in the old dog yet. Helldivers II was announced along with a release window that surprised many fans of its prequel. In a recent live event, many fans are excited about the new experience made by Arrowhead Games. The game's developer not only showed the game but also revealed that Helldivers II would launch on PS5 and another platform. Helldivers launched in 2015, and since then, many fans of co-op and top-down shooters have been enjoying the science fiction game that allows them to fight thrilling and horrifying alien creatures. Helldivers was one of the first Sony games featured on PC, and many Steam users are still playing the game, despite being released many years ago. Helldivers gathered numerous positive reviews, and many fans have asked for a sequel. Luckily for them, the game's developers answered their demands by announcing the new co-op game that will come soon to gaming stores. According to the Helldivers II announcement trailer, the game will release in 2023, ending some rumors and discussions about the franchise's future. Besides the game's release window, the announcement trailer featured lots of gameplay, and it even revealed that the game would also come to PC. New co-op shooters always add some excitement to the genre, and Helldivers II offers lots of fun to the co-op gaming genre with its chaotic action and captivating atmosphere. Unlike Helldivers I, its sequel is a third-person shooter featuring fast-paced action, fascinating settings, fierce and scary creatures, and a dark sense of humor. Across the game's trailer, gamers can see how characters use different weapons, gadgets, structures, and items. One of the most exciting elements of the trailer is the game's settings. Across the short video, gamers can see different settings like deserts and jungles, with various weather conditions. Helldivers II is not the only co-op third-person shooter game coming in 2023, but the amount of excitement from the community sets it apart from other upcoming titles. The Helldivers II trailer features a bit of dark humor while showing off all the features and action the game will offer players when it releases, and many fans of its sequels are already excited about Helldivers II and the critical change it brings. The original Helldivers counts itself as one of the best co-op twin-stick shooters and was able to generate a strong fanbase on PlayStation 4. The frantic bug-hunting action of Helldivers had a distinctly arcade-type feel and the game itself was chock full of humor. The reveal trailer for Helldivers II promises a similar spirit albeit from a shifted perspective. When considering how the perspective change to a behind-the-shoulder camera might change gameplay, there are several possibilities. In a statement on the PlayStation blog, a representative from Arrowhead Games confirmed that friendly fire will play a major part in terms of co-op strategy and careful positioning of squads. Friendly fire was a critical component of Helldivers gameplay and also led to some humorous moments in co-op, but the top-down perspective of that game made it easier to determine a player's line of fire and positioning relative to squad mates. The shift to a behind-the-shoulder camera adds an interesting wrinkle to the always-on, friendly fire and may require players be more present regarding how they coordinate and communicate with their squad. The first Helldivers game saw players take on the role of soldiers fighting in service of Super Earth, a dystopian society under the rule of a managed democracy, and engaged in an endless war against an alien threat. After already drawing inspiration from Verhoeven's film and other military sci-fi classics for the first title, Arrowhead's decision to lean harder into the Starship Troopers aesthetic for the sequel isn't an entirely surprising move. With a tone highly reminiscent of the Federal Network PSAs that play throughout Starship Troopers, the debut trailer that premiered at PlayStation Showcase 2023 shows that Arrowhead is going all in on the social satire for the sequel to Helldivers. The trailer also reveals that the game is embracing another key element of the film that helped inspire it, its over-the-top violence. Throughout the trailer, players are shown disintegrating the alien foes with all manner of overpowered ordnance, all backed by a jingoistic, in-universe recruitment spiel extolling the virtues of freedom and friendship. Although the first trailer for Helldivers II managed to capture the same darkly comedic tone that can be felt throughout the iconic sci-fi film, replicating Starship Troopers' potent brand of pointed social satire could prove more difficult for Arrowhead Games Studios. What made Starship Troopers a masterpiece wasn't simply its melding of ultra-violence with pitch-black comedy, it was that the film's satire had bite and offered up some legitimate commentary. Without some sort of point to Helldivers II's jingoistic presentation, simply rehashing the tone of Starship Troopers, would you like to know more? Ads throughout the game could quickly prove tiring. Depending on when it eventually releases, Helldivers may second also find itself going head-to-head with another game owing a heavy debt to Paul Verhoeven's film. Released by developer Off-World Industries, Starship Troopers Extermination is a tactical shooter directly inspired by the 1997 movie. Starship Troopers Extermination's presentation features the same darkly satirical slant as Helldivers II, with gameplay that is similarly centered around mowing down hordes of vicious alien insects. Helldivers may second still be the best option for players looking for a purely combat-focused experience, though, as Starship Troopers Extermination features base defense elements that can draw players away from the bug-blasting action. Featuring a larger scale and a whole new perspective on the alien battlefield, Helldivers II looks like it should be a welcome addition to the co-op shooter genre when it arrives on PS5 and PC. If Arrowhead Games Studios can maintain the same sort of over-the-top, darkly comedic tone as the film that inspired it throughout Helldivers II's runtime, it should also be a treat for fans of Starship Troopers. The team at Arrowhead Games has already announced that the shift in perspective was done in order to make Helldivers II feel more robust than the original PS3 and PS4 game, and the footage shown of the title so far promises some hectic co-op shooting action. Co-op play is still the intended play mode for the game, and the critical response to the original is hopefully an indication of the sequel having an active community at launch. Helldivers II was an awaited title for many gamers, and when it launches, players will be able to experience a thrilling and chaotic experience made by the same developers that created the prequel that started the franchise, all from a new perspective and with up-to-date graphics. Still, the Mass Effect-style perspective will require squads to coordinate in a way that might make matchmaking with strangers less effective than playing with friends. Fans of the original won't have much longer to wait before suiting up to bring peace through superior firepower, and Helldivers II's shift in perspective signals an intent to make the sequel bigger, better, and buggier. Hopefully this means that Helldivers II blossoms into one of the current PlayStation's most memorable shooter games. Ghostrunner II is on the way, and its protagonist now has his very own ninja motorcycle. The sequel to One More Level's action platformer was shown for the first time during PlayStation Showcase, with vehicular combat prominently featured. The official release claims that it will up the ante from the original in every conceivable way, as Jack explores the wasteland beyond the Dogma Tower. Originally released in late 2020, the first Ghostrunner turned heads with its neon-drenched visuals and fast-paced action. Cyber Ninja protagonist Jack will this time explore the sprawling wasteland beyond Dogma Tower on his motorcycle. Ghostrunner II will feature the same intense and challenging gameplay, but promises new powers, upgradable abilities, and traversal mechanics, as well as an expanded narrative and deeper world building. And of course, it will include a synthwave soundtrack. 505 games will publish, with development by One More Level. Ghostrunner II will attempt to expand on that formula with its new vehicular combat and other features. It will be available later for PC and PlayStation and Xbox consoles in 2023. One of the most unexpected highlights of Sony's PlayStation Showcase 2023 came in the form of the debut trailer for developer S Games' fast-paced samurai slasher, Phantom Blade Zero. While the lengthy gameplay preview of Marvel's Spider-Man 2 that closed out the PlayStation showcase was likely the high point of the stream for many viewers. Phantom Blade Zero's distinctive look and fast-paced combat helped it stand out even when put up against some of the more well-known titles on display. Created by developer S-Game, Phantom Blade is a spiritual successor to the studio's Phantom Blade franchise of mobile titles that were released only for the Chinese market. In Phantom Blade Zero, gamers play as an assassin named Soul who has been framed for the murder of the leader of his former masters, an organization known as The Order. The debut trailer for the stylish action game shows Soul engaged in battle against a variety of unusual enemies in settings ranging from a rundown temple to the back of a runaway wagon. The game's unique visual style not only helps it stand out in a market already crowded with action titles, but also reflects the influences that shaped its development. In a post on the official PlayStation blog, S-Game CEO and founder Soulframe Liang gave some insight into the inspirations behind Phantom Blade Zero. Liang explains how Phantom Blade Zero's developers drew from a wide range of sources when creating the game, stating that it takes place in a universe with Chinese kung fu, intricate machines reminiscent of steampunk, arts of the occult, and intriguing stuff that doesn't quite fit into any of these categories. The unique samurai title also took cues from the world of cinema, with both Bruce Lee's filmography and the John Wick movies being cited as inspiration for what Liang describes as Phantom Blade Zero's kung fu punk aesthetic. Phantom Blade Zero's debut trailer spends most of its runtime showcasing the combat players will engage in as they make their way through the game's semi-open world. Protagonist Soul, having been saved from certain death by a mystic healer's makeshift cure, has just 66 days to discover who actually killed the leader of the Order and clear his name. Soul will have to fight through powerful foes and inhuman monstrosities, using kung fu and a variety of weapons to speedily dispatch his foes. S-Game is drawing on its history as a mobile game developer, where control options are constrained due to touchscreens, to ensure that PS5 players will be able to execute elaborate chains of moves. These were posted in a Q&A that was conducted in the game's official Discord server, which answered a number of important questions. According to this session, the main story alone will consist of 30 to 40 hours of playtime, with a ton of side quests available to tackle. Completing the story of Phantom Blade Zero will grant access to endgame content like a multiplayer dungeon, boss rush mode, and a roguelike game mode too. The studio also notes that the game won't be a PS5 exclusive title as well. The studio behind Phantom Blade Zero, S-Game, confirms how long an average playthrough of the game could be, along with what it offers in terms of multiplayer. The voiceover during Phantom Blade Zero's trailer repeatedly makes reference to the fact that the unnamed protagonist only has 66 days to live. What this means and how it will fit into the narrative can only be speculated on at this stage. The trailer ends with the protagonist declaring he intends to use this time to get his heart back, but it's impossible to know if this is literal or metaphorical. He appears to be an incredibly agile combatant, both in and out of battle, as he's seen performing a variety of flips and jumps while easily traversing the sometimes treacherous terrain. The speed of the game's combat looks borderline frightening at times, with the player's enemies appearing to be every bit as skilled and versatile as the protagonist. For those who enjoy the challenge of a pulse-pounding battle based on timing and skill, there are some extremely promising early signs of this on display in Phantom Blade Zero's wild-looking combat. Many games have fallen into the trap of showing initial promise in trailers, only to severely underdeliver upon their eventual release, and Phantom Blade Zero's developer will no doubt be acutely aware of this. That being said, like many other games at the PlayStation Showcase, the game wasn't given a release date or even a window. This ensures that S-Game will be able to continue its work on the game until it is fully ready, free from the pressures of a public deadline. With its speedy, stylish combat and a roster of creative and eye-catching enemies that give even Black Myth Wukong's mythical monsters a run for their money, Phantom Blade Zero looks set to deliver a unique action experience. And if S-Game can ensure that the game plays as good as it looks, PS5 owners will be in for a treat whenever Phantom Blade Zero releases. Developer Giant Squid has announced the upcoming PS5 exclusive adventure game Sword of the Sea, which looks like a cross between Journey and a Tony Hawk's Pro Skater game. Revealed at the 2023 PlayStation Showcase on May 24, the title is what the team is calling its most ambitious game to date. From the brief teaser shown during the showcase, Sword of the Sea features a breathtaking art style that fans of other giant Squid games will expect. It seems the studio behind Abzu and 2020's action-adventure game The Pathless will not disappoint when it comes to visuals. While the debut trailer doesn't reveal much about the upcoming indie game, it does more than a sufficient job at catching viewers' interests. It shows a range of picturesque and relaxing desert locations, with partially covered ruins and skate park-like structures breaking through the vast sand dunes. The game's central mechanic seems to be sailing or hoverboarding around this mysterious world, and some fans will be immediately reminded of the Endless Runner mobile games Alto's Adventure and Alto's Odyssey, which also set players on a variety of sandboards to glide through a range of scenic and zen-inducing locations. Sword of the Sea is set in an abandoned realm where the terrain flows in constant waves, and the primary means of travel is the hoversword, which serves as a skateboard, snowboard, and hoverboard. The player takes on the role of the Wraith, a mysterious being who has been resurrected in order to bring life back to the empty world. The Wraith will travel across the desolate land, venturing into various ruins, shipwrecks, ancient battlefields, and tombs to discover the hidden cultures within. But giant leviathans will stand in the way of the Wraith's journey, though it's still unclear whether these will be fought or just avoided. Of course, Sword of the Sea will not just depend on its unique movement mechanic of traveling on hoverboards and navigating through skatepark-like ruins to attract players. As seen in the trailer, it will offer up incredible vistas that also rely on color and lighting to convey the beauty of the land the Wraith is voyaging through, and it seems like those who enjoyed the aforementioned Journey or Alto's games will be just as drawn in by the ambience of Sword of the Sea. And Giant Squid's new offering may also make good use of the PS5's DualSense controller features if the Pathless is anything to go by. Developer Giant Squid was founded in 2013 by Matt Nava, who worked as art director for Flower and Journey by Dogma Company before leaving to start his own studio. The distinctive style of the artist's previous projects appears to be making a welcome return with Sword of the Sea, which promises to combine the adrenaline and fun of a skating game with the exploration and meditative atmosphere gamers have come to expect from Giant Squid. Devolver Digital has once again delivered on very promising upcoming indie games set to release over the next couple of years, one example among them being the Plucky Square. With a trailer opening on a children's storybook with charming, cartoony art, it looked set to be another stylistic indie game from Devolver Digital about a hero named Jot and his adventures across the pages of the book. However, the game's announcement quickly caught people's attention when Jot's story literally leaped off the page, suddenly transforming from 2D to 3D and immediately endearing itself to audiences. The Plucky Square seems to instead be delivering a multimedia experience across various styles of gameplay, with inspiration and tributes drawn from fellow classic gaming titles such as Punch-Out! And Link's Awakening. In the absence of an E3 for yet another year, fans turned to Summer Game Fest to get their fix of what to look forward to from the gaming scene. It was a comprehensive, comedy-filled Devolver Digital showcase that presented the publisher's next upcoming indie titles from Cult of the Lamb to Skate Story, promising an exciting look ahead for what it has in the works from both current and new developers. Among these titles was of course the Plucky Square, an already interesting entry to the scene given that the studio called All Possible Future Behind was created by ex-Game Freak developer James Turner. The Plucky Square seems to be using its multimedia premise as a basis to deliver on all fronts, whether it's channeling a Zelda-inspired game style both 2D and 3D with the help of the charming toy-esque aesthetic of the Link's Awakening remake, or becoming reminiscent of 2021's hit co-op title It Takes Two as Jot explores the world beyond the storybook. There seem to be some very intriguing and creative concepts at play in the game, with Jot seemingly capable of not just exiting and entering the storybook he started life in, but also jumping onto other objects such as mugs and tins with even more experimentation in gameplay. In one example, Jot appears to be duking it out with a bear, playing the equivalent of Punch-Out! Within the pages of the storybook, but later in the trailer another example is Jot becoming less the titular squire and more the commando as he shoots down enemies as if it were a level in Gradius. Clearly, All Possible Future's debut game is doing its best to live up to the namesake of All Possible, as the Plucky Squire is gearing itself up to deliver a vast, all-encompassing gaming experience where there might just be a little something for everyone. Whether this might overstretch the scope of the game and deliver too much or if the studio can strike the right balance will remain to be seen. For being such a beloved series, Paper Mario is one of Nintendo's most controversial, with many of the recent entries failing to live up to the standards set by fans of the earlier titles. While traditionally a turn-based RPG series, Paper Mario games have experimented with other genres in entries like the action platformer Super Paper Mario and the puzzle-based combat of Paper Mario: The Origami King. The Plucky Square seems to be taking inspiration from multiple titles, building upon their best elements while maintaining the charming aesthetic that made the Paper Mario series so popular. Plucky Square shares a lot in common with Super Paper Mario in particular, as both games feature the ability to change between dimensional planes and break the traditional notion of a 2D game. While Super Paper Mario limits the player to swapping to a 3D view of the same 2D level, the Plucky Square seems to take this mechanic to the next level by allowing players to explore a fully 3D world outside its 2D levels, complete with a separate 3D model for Jot. The Plucky Square also goes above and beyond the fourth wall breaking from Paper Mario and takes the concept to its logical conclusion with its 3D sections. A recent trend within indie games is a concerted effort to be different from the current competition, whether this is through art style, gameplay mechanics, or story. For example, successful indie games include the likes of Cuphead, which was celebrated for its authentic 1920s rubber hose animation, while Hollow Knight gained support for its enigmatic story about a diminutive insect kingdom. But these games and many others like them have steep learning curves and often aim for an older audience of players, ultimately leaving a gap that games like Little Big Planet once filled, which focused less on challenge and instead looked to build communities. So while the Plucky Square could be compared to Paper Mario for certain gameplay mechanics and 2D art style or Link's Awakening's toy-like 3D design, it still stands as an outlier among many other indie games, as it aims to be a game everyone can enjoy instead of just an older crowd. While an older range of players might be more likely to play and support the game such as through live streams and Let's Plays, the Plucky Square seems to be aiming for the coveted position that Little Big Planet held in its heyday, that aims to provide a fun and creative experience through which it can build its own community. One of the biggest selling points for Little Big Planet was its focus on user-generated content. While there were story campaigns that could be played solo or with friends, the series hosted an extensive collection of player-created levels that showcased their ingeniousness and creativity with the game mechanics and level editors. If the Plucky Square is to follow on from where Little Big Planet left off, then it will need to do more than draw players in with a fourth-wall-breaking story. With the Plucky Square's multimedia style and seemingly modular approach to hybridizing 2D and 3D level design, there's ample creative potential to explore. The Plucky Square has already captured the hearts of many and looks like it will be a game to watch out for when it releases in 2023. The new trailer for Dogma II is packed with plenty to look forward to, from terrifying monsters to exciting gameplay. Capcom revealed gameplay for its long-anticipated action RPG at the PlayStation Showcase, and fans couldn't be more excited for what's to come. The first Dragon's Dogma was released in 2012 for PlayStation 3 and Xbox 360. The game was praised by critics for its gameplay and innovative pawn system. The protagonist of Dragon's Dogma is the Arisen, who is accompanied by pawns, AI-controlled companions who aid the player character throughout their journey. Gamers could create one of their own pawns and borrow ones made by other players. Another staple of the gameplay was the ability to climb onto enemies in order to fight them. The trailer for Dragon's Dogma II starts off with beautiful scenery, but soon after it jumps into action. It seems the Arisen is back, but they don't seem to remember their previous adventure. What the story will entail exactly is difficult to tell just yet. Plenty of mythical creatures show up, from the expected dragons to a gorgon and various other magical beings. The usual Dragon's Dogma gameplay elements are still present, with the Arisen climbing onto enemies during battle. It seems at least some parts of the environment will be destructible or allow interactions through magic. Capcom also promises the game will be narrative-driven and filled with plenty of choices, from picking the look and vocation of the Arisen to deciding how to approach each situation. The game also teases companions who will feel so unique, players could think they're on a multiplayer adventure. Dragon's Dogma II's website says this will be made possible by the latest technology in AI. Players don't have a full picture of the world yet, but it's apparent that Dragon's Dogma II will be big. The first game was already massive, and went as far as overhauling parts of its map after the initial main quest was done. It's hard to say whether Dragon's Dogma II will retread enough of the first game's story to do again, but but it's a possibility. Dragon's Dogma II's trailer also introduces cat folk comparable to the Elder Scrolls Caveat. Adding new races to the human-centric setting suggests that the Arisen will be visiting a lot more varied locales than the caves, forests, and ruins they once did. Indeed, the first shot of the trailer suggests a scope exceeding the first game's. Someone, possibly the Arisen, is riding across a body of water on the back of a griffin. These winged beasts were already straightforward yet exciting fights in the original game, with ranged attacks or holding on for dear life necessary to stop a griffin from flying out of active combat. Now it seems possible for fights to ascend even higher into the air than before, and veteran players are no doubt wondering what kind of spectacle that means for Dragon's Dogma II's inevitable dragon fight. Combined with some massive towns, cities, and general structures, Dragon's Dogma II could be staggeringly huge. The combat is bound to match that feeling, given that it inherits all the cues that made Dragon's Dogma's fights so epic. Groups of weaker enemies and the player's pawns once again form large scuffles, and foes crumple to giant sword swings and even larger magical blasts just like they used to. Dragon's Dogma was notable during the age of Skyrim and Dark Souls for making its magic look and feel world-shaping, and Dragon's Dogma II recaptures that. Apart from the expected bolide meteor spell, mages can now bring light to the night, and seemingly also create temporary platforms. There's bound to be more tricks in the player's arsenal, and they'll need it when going up against the massive bosses. Even more mythical monsters like Gorgons and Sphinxes join Dragon's Dogma II's roster, and battles with them should still be the dynamic affairs this franchise is known for. Already, the trailer shows a pawn tossing another pawn up to a large enemy's face before the rest of the party rushes its legs, and a subsequent shot reveals a Cyclops breaking one side of a bridge. Dragon's Dogma II is full of possibilities, and it looks like it could match and exceed the first game's own. No doubt fans are excited to find out whether Dragon's Dogma II will be a worthy successor to the original. However, when exactly Capcom will release the game is not known at the moment. But considering fans have been waiting for a sequel for 11 years, a few more months' wait seems bearable. If there's one thing that PlayStation's recent showcase certainly didn't lack, it's variety. Though there weren't quite as many first-party reveals as fans had hoped for, PlayStation's showcase was still packed with plenty of announcements, albeit from some smaller developers. And, rather surprisingly, these announcements came from a wide variety of different genres, from action-adventure games like Marvel's Spider-Man 2 to 2D Metroidvanias like Ultros to ambitious open-world indie titles like Towers of Agasbha. Another brand-new IP from a first-time studio, Dreamlet's Towers of Agasbha is an open-world action-adventure game with a unique twist in that it's also a city builder. Though it coming from newcomer, Towers of Agasbha had one of the most breathtaking trailers in the entirety of PlayStation's showcase, showing stunning graphics, beautiful environments, and capturing a sense of adventure that's only really present in a few AAA games these days. Over the course of its brief minute-and-a-half-long trailer, Towers of Agasbha showcased a slew of gorgeous environments, some of which look truly ambitious for a studio's first game. The biggest example of this comes about a minute into the trailer when the protagonist is paragliding their way through a forest of brightly colored, tall plants gradually stretching their way to the sky. A few seconds later, Towers of Agasbha's trailer shows the main character swimming underwater, again surrounded by bright foliage. The trailer then ends with Towers of Agasbha's player character gliding through the air, passing floating mountains and landing on top of a huge flying whale-like creature. Towers of Agasbha also shows a brief glimpse of archery gameplay, with the main enemy type seemingly being hostile creatures. The Avatar parallels don't stop there either, as according to a recent post on the PlayStation blog, Towers of Agasbha will revolve around the titular island's complex and ever-changing ecosystems, and how they impact the protagonist's tribe, just like Pandora and its effect on the Nausicaa people in the Avatar movies. Though Towers of Agasbha has enough of its own identity to stand apart from Avatar, its presence at such a high-profile showcase does naturally bring up questions about the whereabouts of Avatar Frontiers of Pandora once again. Officially announced all the way back in June 2021, Avatar Frontiers of Pandora is the long-awaited open-world game from Ubisoft that's gone practically radio silent since that first reveal. According to some reports, Avatar Frontiers of Pandora has allegedly been in the works since 2017, meaning that it's been in development for 6 years now, and if that is the case, then it's about time that fans got to see more from it than just a pre-rendered CGI trailer. The showcase also showcased some footage of Final Fantasy XVI and Street Fighter VI. Alan Wake 2 received a new gameplay trailer during the PlayStation Showcase event that confirmed a new playable character for the game who isn't the titular Alan Wake. Remedy Entertainment's Alan Wake 2 has been hotly anticipated for years now, but the PlayStation Showcase was the first time that fans got a good look at gameplay. The initial Alan Wake 2 reveal trailer from 2021 didn't reveal a lot about the game. It confirmed that Alan Wake would be returning, PC and next-gen consoles were the targeted platforms, and that 2023 was the targeted release year, but not much else. The new trailer for Alan Wake 2 confirms many more details about the upcoming survival horror game, including its firm release date. The Alan Wake 2 release date is October 17th, at which point it will launch for PC through the Epic Games Store, PlayStation 5, and Xbox Series X with pre-orders available now. The trailer introduces new playable character Saga Anderson, portrayed by Melanie Liburd, who will serve as a new playable character in Alan Wake 2. Anderson is an FBI agent who is investigating mysterious murders at Bright Falls, with her investigation intersecting with Alan Wake's story. Anderson is joined by a character who is seemingly portrayed by Alan Wake 2 lead writer and creative director Sam Lake. The gameplay footage in the trailer shows Anderson exploring an abandoned general store with an over-the-shoulder viewpoint that looks very similar to the Resident Evil 2 remake and other recent RE games. Someone or something then bursts through the wall in what is a rather effective jump scare moment, underlining Remedy's claim that Alan Wake 2 would be more of a pure horror experience. It should be noted that while Anderson was the primary focus of this new Alan Wake 2 trailer, she won't be the game's only playable character. Alan Wake 2 will have two playable protagonists. Players will sometimes play as Anderson as she explores Bright Falls, but other times they will be playing as Alan Wake, trapped in the dark place, a nightmare version of New York City. Alan Wake 2's Saga Anderson is an interesting addition to the franchise as an FBI agent arriving in Bright Falls to solve its ritualistic murders. That insinuates that Alan Wake 2 would therefore swap back and forth between protagonists, but that is not necessarily the case. And how much influence Wake's writing has on either storyline will be exciting to explore. The game leans fully into survival horror gameplay this time around, echoing a lot of what made Resident Evil 2's remake as compelling as it is. But Alan Wake 2 could be far more original if the player cannot trust Wake when he is at his typewriter. It was reinforced throughout the original Alan Wake that the writer was experiencing the results of his written work as he discovered manuscript pages precluding or addressing every occurrence. Alan Wake's episodic storytelling made it akin to a limited series of television rather than a novel, though, and the protagonist's role in the sequel seems even more convoluted. Of course, Alan Wake's conclusion prepared players for this perfectly, and Remedy's connected universe could also have a role to play. Alan Wake's narrative being unreliably told by its own protagonist is a wonderfully surreal approach, playing well into Remedy's bread and butter as a developer, and means that surprises could come through in any scenario. Alan Wake's manuscript pages did not have any gameplay ramifications that made a huge difference, but it would be excellent to see pages return in the sequel and help players prepare for subsequent encounters or learn of horrors that lurk behind an otherwise unassuming corner. Still, Wake is awfully unreliable as the potential author of his and Anderson's stories, and there will almost surely be something else at play that is manipulating events. Playing as Wake, it would be incredible to see options allowing the player to choose certain outcomes and write them into the story. This could lead to a lot of player choice, especially since Wake and Anderson's stories are apparently playable in whichever order fans desire after a particular point. That seems to suggest that there will not be a constant back and forth of manipulated influences, and there could be two isolated campaigns that the player can select from instead. Either way, Wake's influence as a reality-warping writer could still have a much more meaningful impact than it seemed to in the original game. The juxtaposition of each narrative should hopefully intertwine with one another anyhow, but there are likely surprises here and there for how it could actually turn out. It will be interesting to see how these two distinct storylines coincide with one another if they do at all, or if one has the potential to spoil something happening in the other. Resident Evil's over-the-shoulder survival horror seems like a clear inspiration in the brief gameplay that was shown. But the effects of Wake's writing and his inability to grasp his own reality should still play a definitive role in either of Alan Wake 2's narratives. Those excited enough by the Alan Wake 2 trailer that they want to pre-order the game should note that 2 pre-order bonuses have been announced so far, the ornate revolver skin for Alan Wake and the Survival Resources Pack for Saga. Also available come Alan Wake 2's October release date is the Deluxe Edition, which includes the Expansion Pass, Night Springs and Lake House expansions, Nordic Shotgun skin for Saga, Parliament Shotgun for Alan, Crimson Windbreaker for Saga, Celebrity Suit for Alan, and Lantern Charm for Saga. Alan Wake 2 Standard Edition is priced at $49.99 on PC and $59.99 on consoles. The Alan Wake 2 Deluxe Edition will retail for $70 on PC and $80 on consoles, though it's unclear why there's a price discrepancy. Alan Wake 2 will only get a digital-only release. The decision is controversial enough that an explanation has been included on the official website for Alan Wake 2, but some fans may still not find the answer satisfying enough. The topic of digital-only releases has been discussed for a while now both by fans and distributors. While some may find it an easier way to get access to their favorite games, there are certainly disadvantages to the decision. Alan Wake 2's developer, Remedy Entertainment, had 2 of its games delisted from distributing platforms in the past. Due to licensing issues, both Alan Wake and Quantum Break were removed at one point from Steam and Xbox storefronts. While they both made a return once the problem was resolved, delisting happens to plenty of games that are deemed to be too old or not popular enough, or when the developer ceases further support, meaning fans will no longer be able to access the title. At least physical copies of old games can still be found in used game shops or sites. Under Alan Wake 2's FAQ section, there's specifically a part that explains the decision to go digital only. For one, the answer points to the examples of other distributors, pointing out that both PlayStation and Xbox sell a discless version of their latest generation of products. Through this example, it's reason the phenomenon is not rare nowadays, and on top of that, it helps keep the cost down. The website lists a better experience as the last reason to go digital only, as even with a disc the game would have required downloading anyway. The question right under this asks about the possibility of a disc-based version ever being released. However, currently, there are no plans to distribute Alan Wake 2 on a disc. The detailed explanation may satisfy the curiosity of some fans. But there are plenty of players who don't support the trend of offering only a digital release for video games. It takes agency away from gamers, giving complete control to the distributor when it comes to access. Whether the decision will damage the sales numbers of Alan Wake 2 in any way is yet to be seen. THQ Nordic has subsequently taken online to posit that there are still plenty of people who prefer their game purchases to be tangible, adding that it would hence love to put out a physical version of Alan Wake 2. Seeing how the Austrian publisher already handled the physical release of Alan Wake for PC, it's not opposed to the idea of going full circle, a company representative wrote on Twitter. And while the fans thus shouldn't hold their breath for this deal to materialize, stranger things have happened in the genre, as recently underlined by the physical release of obscure indie survival horror Signalis. The gameplay featured in the new Alan Wake 2 trailer could excite even those who are unfamiliar with the series. The real treat is all the sneaky details packed into the almost 2-minute video that will be very familiar to fans of the series. This is nothing new for Remedy, who love hiding details in their games as well. But what they chose to hide in their latest trailer may say a lot about what players can expect from the developer's next release. The latest trailer is narrated by Alan Wake himself, and at one point he discusses what drew the FBI to Bright Falls 13 years after the first game's conclusion. The victim was one of their own, Wake says, FBI Special Agent Robert Nightingale. Players familiar with the first game should recognize that name. Agent Nightingale chases Wake through most of that game's campaign until he is eventually consumed by the Dark Presence. The FBI agent's possessed form was last seen staring out across the town's annual Deer Fest, but it appears he's remained in Bright Falls all this time. In the opening moments of the trailer, there is an idyllic shot of Bright Falls, the main setting of the first game and presumably the second as well. In that shot, a banner hung from a street lamp is promoting the 81st annual Deer Fest. The first game also takes place around the time of Bright Falls Deer Fest. If this banner is any indication, Alan Wake 2 will likely take place around the same time of year, in mid to late September. This banner also confirms the 13-year time jump from the first game's conclusion, as that game took place during the 68th annual Deer Fest. In Alan Wake 2's debut trailer, shown at the 2021 Game Awards, there was a shot featured of a murder scene in the forest with a symbol prominently carved into a tree, 3 triangles vertically overlapping each other. That symbol is the insignia of the Cult of the Tree, a group that operates in the town of Watery, a rival to Bright Falls. The cult has only been mentioned in passing, most recently in Control's AWE DLC, but this latest trailer finally provides a glimpse at its members. They are the intimidating figures in deer masks and robes seen stalking Agent Anderson, the game's new playable character, in the trailer's first half. Those figures are wearing the cult symbol around their necks. The neighboring town of Watery, which is in constant competition with Bright Falls, has seen many references across Remedy's titles. It hosts a festival in September to compete with Deerfest called Moosefest, and in the first Alan Wake, there is a radio program talking about how that event set a record for attendance that year. It is also where the Cult of the Tree operates. However, Watery also comes up in Control. The Federal Bureau of Control employs an enigmatic janitor named Audie who frequently helps Jesse Faden throughout the campaign. After Jesse completes his side quest, Audie decides to take a vacation. He will later send Jesse a postcard from Watery, a strange choice of location given the town is frequently described as run down. Yet another connection between Control's Audie and Watery, only this one is much more obscure. In Remedy's 2019 game, Audie is seen drinking a beer called Ama, although he never mentions anything about it or why he seems to prefer it. It appears there may be a connection between Ama and the town of Watery. In the scene in the trailer where Agent Anderson is engaged with a member of the Cult of the Tree in a convenience store, there is a row of drink coolers in the background branded with the Ama logo. This connection is further reinforced in ads featuring a bottle of Ama in Alan Wake Remastered. In the later part of the trailer, there are several shots that, rather than Bright Falls or Watery, seem to be set in New York. One of those shots features a neon sign in the background for the Ocean View Hotel. For players familiar with Control, the Ocean View Motel is a place of power used frequently by Jesse Faden to travel between locations within the oldest house, although it also connects to multiple other dimensions. The presence of the Ocean View Hotel in Alan Wake may second suggest a similar portal through dimensions, perhaps one connected to Bright Falls. As was mentioned above, several scenes seem to take place outside of Washington State, where Bright Falls is located, and will instead be set in New York City. This holds significance for a number of connections involving Remedy's other games. First and foremost, New York is where Alan Wake normally lives. He and Alice are based out of the Big Apple, and there are flashbacks in the first Alan Wake that are set in their big city apartment. However, New York City is also the location of the oldest house, the headquarters of the Federal Bureau of Control. This may suggest that the connections between Jesse Faden and Alan Wake will grow stronger. Alan Wake 2. A major storytelling element of the first Alan Wake game is the loose manuscript pages scattered throughout the game world. These pages were written by Alan himself, although he doesn't remember writing them, and the events described on the pages all happened to him in real life. In the latest Alan Wake 2 trailer, Agent Anderson is seen holding a manuscript page while talking to her partner Agent Casey. The text is about us, she says, referencing what is written on the pages. It seems that, once again, Alan Wake's writing is changing reality. The other FBI agent arriving in Bright Falls alongside Agent Anderson is just bursting with Easter eggs. For one, he is modeled to look strikingly similar to Alan Wake 2's creative director, Sam Lake, who was also the likeness for Max Payne, but this isn't the first time an Agent Casey has appeared in Remedy's games. Agent Casey is also a character in a series of books by Alan Wake, which is referenced in Alan Wake Remastered. In Quantum Break, a game about time manipulation, an Easter egg called Return features FBI Agent Casey who is investigating the disappearance of Alan Wake in Bright Falls in 2010. Finally, in Control, a document details an FBI Agent Casey requesting files regarding the Bright Falls AWE. In the final moments of the first Alan Wake, the titular author discovers a way to save his wife Alice from an alternate dimension called the Dark Place by writing a new ending to his reality-warping manuscript. However, in saving her, Alan also strands himself in the Dark Place. Based on the scenes in the Alan Wake 2 trailer, as well as documents and videos from Control's AWE DLC, it seems that Alan is still trapped in the Dark Place 13 years later when the sequel takes place. However, Jesse Faden's strange visions of Alan Wake during that DLC suggest that he is trying to write his way out of the parallel dimension, and this new trailer's conclusion seems to suggest he will succeed. While Alan Wake 2 seemingly shares more in common with a franchise like Silent Hill, being that the threat is more psychological than physical, this idea of enemies chasing the player can still be interwoven into gameplay. In the original Alan Wake game, the concept of using light to fight back darkness was present throughout the entire experience. Alan would need to trudge through stretches of darkness with only a flashlight to defend himself against the talkative entities that lurk in the shadows. While certainly scary on paper, these enemy encounters were mostly predetermined, with ghastly figures leaping out during scripted moments that made them predictable on subsequent playthroughs. In Alan Wake 2, the idea of enemies being unpredictable in the dark should be capitalized on more fully. To do this, Remedy could create an antagonist similar to Mr. X from Resident Evil 2 who actively searches the environment. This would make any dark area a tense place to navigate, especially while visibility is limited and more reliance is placed on the player's light sources. Secondly, having these enemies be able to use shadows more actively to hide and traverse the environment would help elevate immersion and make the world of Alan Wake 2 feel more alive and dangerous. This should provide plenty of variety, and it will be interesting to see if Remedy is able to pull it off. Remedy's impressive track record means chances are good Alan Wake 2 will live up to the hype and should be yet another great horror game in a year that's already been filled with some of the genre's best releases. Horror game fans will find out this October. Ubisoft has finally offered a closer look at the highly anticipated Assassin's Creed Mirage through a gameplay trailer at Sony's PlayStation Showcase event. Following its official unveiling last year, the company has kept details about the latest Assassin's Creed entry under wraps. Now, in its latest reveal trailer, fans got a glimpse of what to expect from Assassin's Creed Mirage, particularly with regard to its tone and gameplay. One of the biggest underlying themes surrounding the upcoming title is the idea that it will be a return to form for the Assassin's Creed franchise, reminiscent of its early games. This idea, along with the numerous Assassin's Creed Mirage rumors and leaks, served to build excitement among the fanbase. Fortunately for fans, the latest trailer for Assassin's Creed Mirage indicates that Ubisoft may be looking to replicate the experience of its pre-RPG era of the franchise. In the official gameplay trailer, players could see the protagonist Basim navigate a medieval Baghdad, focusing heavily on stealth, parkour, and assassinations. The footage shows a modern take on the classic Assassin's Creed games with the tone and gameplay showing a similarity to the likes of Altair and Ezio. Ubisoft also teased some new abilities such as Assassin Focus, which lets Basim mark and assassinate several targets in a row, and a new parkour element with the pole vault. Further, the developers also announced that the title will release on October 12th, confirming previous Assassin's Creed Mirage release date rumors. While Ubisoft has claimed that this latest entry would mark a return to Assassin's Creed's roots ever since it was first announced, Ubisoft's silence about Assassin's Creed Mirage's development had some franchise fans concerned that the developer may have abandoned these plans. Luckily for those worried that the game had drifted from this initial vision, the gameplay shown off for Assassin's Creed Mirage looks to channel the same mix of stealth and action that first helped the franchise become a success. The first thing longtime fans of the franchise likely noticed when watching the Assassin's Creed Mirage gameplay trailer is how closely it resembles the first Assassin's Creed. Not only does this latest entry share a similar setting to the franchise's freshman outing, but it also appears to put a renewed emphasis on combat and freerunning as players make their way through Baghdad's crowded streets. Parkour in Assassin's Creed games had slowly become less of a focus over the years, and seeing it take center stage once again shows that Ubisoft looks to be holding to the promise it made when the game was first announced. Given the increasingly padded-out length of recent entries in the franchise, many gamers were skeptical when Ubisoft first announced Assassin's Creed Mirage as a return to the series' roots. Despite this skepticism, though, Ubisoft appears to be staying true to its word and delivering a game that puts the focus squarely on the combat, stealth, and free-running mechanics that defined early Assassin's Creed games. This back-to-basics approach may be a tough sell for players who were introduced to the series with games like Assassin's Creed Valhalla, which could take well over 100 hours to fully complete, but it should help to bring back old fans and new players alike. By returning to the series' roots with Assassin's Creed Mirage, Ubisoft can deliver an experience that will appeal to players who are either unable or unwilling to devote dozens or hundreds of hours to reaching the end credits. This sort of smaller, more focused title could broaden the appeal of the franchise in the lead-up to the launch of several upcoming Assassin's Creed games. Additionally, despite its shorter length, Basim's story is likely to reveal some important new pieces of Assassin's Creed lore. Despite featuring a smaller scale than the franchise's recent outings, Assassin's Creed Mirage already looks to be a worthy successor to the series' storied legacy. Whether it can capture the magic that made the first Assassin's Creed a hit remains to be seen, but this new gameplay trailer already makes it abundantly clear that Ubisoft is determined to give the well-worn formula another chance to shine. Unfortunately, PC players who only use Steam won't be able to play Assassin's Creed Mirage at launch. Aside from the console release, players will only be able to play Assassin's Creed Mirage on the Epic Games Store or through the official Ubisoft Store. Ubisoft has yet to clarify whether the title will be seen on Steam at a later date or not, so it may still come to the popular platform at some point in the future. As reported by The Gamer, and originally posted on the Xbox Series X subreddit, the store page of Assassin's Creed Mirage has been updated on the Xbox Store. While the updated page clarifies that the final rating is pending, it maintains that Assassin's Creed Mirage will include real gambling and paid contests, along with other in-game purchases. The rest of the details are fairly standard when it comes to Assassin's Creed games. It's perhaps hard to imagine the exact implications of this mechanic, but maybe Assassin's Creed Mirage includes gameplay systems that allow players to spend real money on a game of chance. Fans should also note that there might be an error in the store page listing, and they should wait for an official update from Ubisoft. It'll be interesting to see if Ubisoft denies these reports again, which may more or less confirm that there are no loot boxes or gambling systems in Assassin's Creed Mirage. Of course, Assassin's Creed Mirage isn't the only title in the works for the series. Ubisoft is currently working on multiple entries, one of which takes place in feudal Japan and another that takes place in Central Europe during the 16th century witch trials. The developer is also seemingly working on a hub-based project under Assassin's Creed Infinity, although Ubisoft hasn't divulged a lot of information on what to expect. Either way, if the latest gameplay trailer for Assassin's Creed Mirage is anything to go by, it's that fans may be in for an interesting future in the world of Assassin's Creed. Very first game from new Swedish studio Hadoke, Ultros was by far one of the most unique-looking games revealed during PlayStation's showcase. A 2D side-scroller with incredibly bright and trippy visuals, Ultros looks like it takes the best parts of a modern Metroidvania and gives them its own unique, bold look. And that might be exactly what the genre needs right now. Art direction is one of the most underrated elements in modern-day video game design, though it's slowly becoming a bigger selling point. As games transitioned from the 5th generation of consoles to the 6th, a big shift in art direction came with it. As games became more technologically advanced, demand for more realistic graphics and art styles increased, leading to the washed-out grays and browns that dominated the Xbox 360 and PS3 era of video games. But over the last few years, games have started to deliver more diverse art styles, and for indie games this has been an excellent way to stand out from the crowd. Ultros seems to be the latest indie game embracing this trend, putting its bold and expressive art direction front and center of its marketing. In a recent PlayStation blog post about Ultros, the game's design director spends a good portion of the article emphasizing the game's unique art style, detailing just how important it is to the experience. Ultros has apparently hired El Huervo, the talented artist behind Hotline Miami's immediately recognizable aesthetic and the one responsible for giving Ultros its incredibly unique psychedelic art style. According to the blog post, Ultros will also use a mix of hand-drawn art, dynamic camera angles, and colorful sprites to deliver a hypnotic effect. But while Ultros' art style is more than enough to turn heads, its implementation in the game and its themes seems to be the thing that'll capture fans' attention in the long run. Set aboard a mysterious gigantic sarcophagus floating through space, Ultros tasks its players with fighting their way through the ship, exploring every inch of it to unravel new parts of the mystery. A large part of Ultros is its roguelike gameplay, which is explained in the story via an in-game sci-fi loop, similar to the likes of Deathloop and Returnal. With mystery and confusion at its heart, Ultros' trippy and bright art style seems to perfectly fit the game's themes and tone. Ultros is said to combine exploration with a sci-fi setting, and a small blurb in the trailer's description calls it a psychedelic tale, in which players will be investigating a giant sarcophagus in space. The gameplay certainly seems to be inspired by elements from some of the aforementioned modern Metroidvania classics, with the protagonist running through beautiful environments, taking on fast and often terrifying enemies. The gameplay isn't shown off much in the trailer, but game design director Martin Bruggeman describes Ultros as having an intimate close combat system. Gameplay is obviously extremely important for Metroidvania games, as the fluidity of movement and speed of combat in games like Hollow Knight and Dead Cells were major contributing factors to their respective success. Frankly, the trailer is sold off the music and the artwork alone, as both are equally stunning. It definitely seems as though all the elements are there to make this another in a recent string of amazing titles in the genre. Ultros is currently set to release at some point in 2024, which hopefully means the game is likely coming out sometime after the release of Hollow Knight Silksong. With huge successes like Hollow Knight and Dead Cells, the 2D Metroidvania genre has only gotten increasingly popular over the last few years, and more indies have tried to use the genre to their own advantage. Even now, there are countless 2D Metroidvanias set to release in the near future, ranging from already well-known brands like Blasphemous 2 and Hollow Knight Silksong to lesser-known newcomers like Doomblade. It's more important than ever for an indie like Ultros to stand out from the crowd in any way it can, and that's exactly what its psychedelic art style does. The death of Cayde 6 hit the Destiny 2 community hard and has left a hole among the game's cast which is still vacant. But this looks to change when the Hunter Vanguard makes his grand return in the game's next expansion, The Final Shape. The game's next expansion will mark the end of the Light and Darkness saga, with Guardians and the Witness facing off in one final battle to determine the fate of the universe. It appears Cayde 6 will be returning, though not as a Guardian, to help his former comrades in arms in this climactic battle a decade in the making. Destiny 2 is currently in Season of the Deep, the second season of content following the release of Lightfall in February 2023. The season sees the return of Titan and Deputy Commander Sloan, both of which have been missing since the end of Season of Arrivals and the launch of Beyond Light. Sloan is calling Guardians to Titan to help protect a creature residing deep beneath the waves of the moon's methane oceans which may be able to help in the coming battle against the Witness. Cayde 6's pending return was revealed as part of Bungie's contribution to the May 2023 PlayStation Showcase. He appeared sitting across from his longtime friend and Vanguard member, Ikora Rey, who recounts the major events to have occurred since Cayde's death at Uldren SOV's hands in 2018's Forsaken expansion. The Hunter Vanguard's return also marks the return of Nathan Fillion, Cayde's original voice actor, to the series after Nolan North stepped in to voice the character inside Forsaken. Along with Cayde's return, the teaser gave a first glimpse at the lush landscape hidden behind the portal the Witness opened on the Traveler and disappeared into at the end of Lightfall's campaign. It is not clear whether this is a world created by the Witness or another dimension, entirely, where the being of darkness is trying to spread its influence and bring an end to its eons-old conflict with the Traveler. Whatever the world may be, players will be able to learn more about what The Final Shape has in store with Bungie's next Destiny 2 showcase, set to take place on August 22, 2023. It would not be surprising to see the Destiny 2 community largely celebrate the return of Cayde 6 and, in turn, Nathan Fillion, as both were extremely popular among the game's player base. The return may be bittersweet for others, though, due to the passing of Commander Zavala's voice actor Lance Reddick in March 2023, which hit Destiny 2 players hard due to the actor's own popularity and mutual love for the community. There are some other PSVR 2 port reveal and RE4 remake footage, and a CGI trailer for Concord, a new IP from Firewalk Studios. At Sony's latest PlayStation Showcase event, the long-rumored Metal Gear Solid 3 Snake Eater remake was finally announced alongside the Metal Gear Solid Master Collection Volume 1 set. These Metal Gear Solid games leaked quite some time ago, but now fans finally have official confirmation. Metal Gear Solid 3 Snake Eater is notable for being the earliest game in the Metal Gear Solid series timeline-wise. So even though it's the third numbered entry in the series, it does make some sense to start there if Konami is hoping to remake Hideo Kojima's games instead of trying to make brand new Metal Gear Solid experiences. It remains to be seen just how substantial the differences in the Metal Gear Solid 3 Remake will be, as the announcement trailer was light on details. The CG trailer for the Metal Gear Solid 3 Remake showed Naked Snake sneaking around in the jungle, but didn't reveal much else beyond that it's in development for PS5. What may get fans buzzing even more than the Metal Gear Solid 3 Remake confirmation is the announcement of Metal Gear Solid Master Collection Volume 1. Which will give fans of the franchise the chance to relive the classic Metal Gear Solid games on modern platforms. Since the announcement happened during the PlayStation Showcase, all fans know for sure is that the collection is coming to PS5, but insiders have suggested that it will also be coming to other platforms like PC and Xbox. Despite not seeing a new release in the series since 2018, Metal Gear fans were treated quite well at the recent PlayStation Showcase. Aside from the confirmation of the rumored Metal Gear Solid 3 Remake, Konami is also bringing the first 3 Metal Gear Solid games to the PS5 via the Metal Gear Solid Master Collection Volume 1. Metal Gear Solid Master Collection Volume 1 was announced alongside Metal Gear Solid Delta Snake Eater at the PlayStation Showcase. At first, it was only confirmed that the Metal Gear Solid collection would feature the original Metal Gear Solid game, Metal Gear Solid 2 Sons of Liberty, and Metal Gear Solid 3, Snake Eater. However, it's now been confirmed through the collection's PlayStation Store listing that the original Metal Gear game and Metal Gear 2 Solid Snake will also be part of the package. This means that Metal Gear Solid Master Collection Volume 1 will effectively feature 5 games instead of 3. Metal Gear Solid 4 Guns of the Patriots originally released in 2008 for the PS3 and follows Old Snake, who has rapidly aged due to genetic changes as part of his cloning process. Metal Gear Solid 4's story sees Old Snake face off one final time with Liquid Snake, who is inhabiting the body of Revolver Ocelot in one of gaming auteur Hideo Kojima's near-universally acclaimed masterpieces. While Metal Gear Solid 4 has become a beloved entry in the franchise, it's had unfortunately limited accessibility due to its status as a PS3 exclusive and lack of re-releases for modern platforms. Due to the unique architecture of the PS3, newer PlayStation consoles like the PS4 and PS5 have a difficult time emulating PS3 games like Metal Gear Solid 4 without heavy alterations. While the hardware of the PS4 simply wasn't powerful enough to handle the emulation of PS3 games, the PS5 boasts the specs necessary but would still have a hard time replicating PS3 titles without having to make fundamental changes to the original game's source codes. As such, most developers have not found the time or resources necessary to port PS3 games to modern consoles worth the investment, but the Metal Gear Solid Master Collection shows that Konami may be willing to try. The announcement states that this will be Volume 1 of the Metal Gear Solid Master Collection, implying that additional volumes could be on the way. It's likely that Konami is testing the waters for the Metal Gear series with this collection and the Metal Gear Solid 3 Remake in order to gauge whether bringing Metal Gear Solid 4 to the PS5 is worth the investment. Depending on how well these projects do, the company could see the value in bringing more classic Metal Gear titles to modern platforms. According to Konami's press release, this remake will star the original voice actors, while also promising the same rich story and expansive environments that made the original game such a classic. This means that Naked Snake will once again be played by his original voice actor David Hayter, which many fans expressed their excitement to hear again. Hayter's voice for all iterations of Snake, including Naked Snake, is his most iconic role, with many being glad to see him return. The last time that Hayter voiced the character was the Solid Snake skin in Super Bomberman R back in 2018. He also reprised his role for Super Smash Bros. Ultimate, albeit through recycled voice clips from his performance in Super Smash Bros. Brawl. This is also the first time since 2010 that Hayter has played Snake in the Metal Gear franchise, as he was replaced by Kiefer Sutherland for the Metal Gear Solid 5 duology and hadn't returned outside the aforementioned crossover appearances. It's a little unclear if the reprisals are from new voice recordings, or if the game will retain the original voice tracks and performances of the characters from 2004. Hayter has yet to comment on the situation on Twitter as well. Hayter had hinted there was a Metal Gear Solid remake back in 2021, so it's a safe bet that he'll be reprising the role, either through archived audio or new ones. Regardless, many nostalgic fans were happy to hear him back as the iconic soldier. Konami confirms that its development team for the Metal Gear Solid 3 Remake will consist of its own staff and those at Virtuos. This statement was given to Ethan Gatch of Kotaku on Twitter, who asked a Konami spokesperson who the development team for this remake was. This spokesperson confirmed that it will be some of Konami's own development team working together with support from acclaimed porting studio Virtuosi. There was previously evidence for this last year, where Virtuo's official website had listed Konami as one of its clients. Virtuo's previous work includes the ports of Final Fantasy X and X-2 for PS3 and Vita, the Nier Automata Nintendo Switch port, the Batman Return to Arkham port to PS4, and even assisting with the Demon's Souls remake for PS5. With Virtuo's track record, it's a strong profile to help Konami in remaking MGS 3. Konami has released a series of in-game screenshots showing off just how good Metal Gear Solid Delta Snake Eater, the upcoming Metal Gear Solid 3 remake, looks. While the CG trailer for the Metal Gear Solid 3 remake still caused quite a buzz, some fans understandably would rather see in-game footage. There are no in-game videos for Metal Gear Solid Delta Snake Eater to watch just yet, but Konami has released a series of screenshots that can hopefully tide Metal Gear Solid fans over in the meantime. The screenshots are noted to be from a work-in-progress game, but if the final product looks anything like them, Metal Gear Solid Delta Snake Eater will likely be the best-looking MGS game to date. The Metal Gear Solid 3 remake screenshots show the harsh jungle environments that Naked Snake will have to traverse in the game, as well as some areas being patrolled by guards. Fans can also see a rope bridge hanging perilously over a chasm, as well as a terrifying crocodile. Wildlife and the jungle environment played key roles in the original Metal Gear Solid 3, so it makes sense that they will be a focus in the remake as well. Details on how exactly Metal Gear Solid Delta Snake Eater will be evolving the gameplay from the original MGS 3 are unavailable at this time, but more information should come to light in the months ahead. There is a lot of pressure on Konami and Virtuos to remake a title as beloved as Metal Gear Solid 3, especially without Kojima's involvement. His fans and detractors alike cannot deny his approach to storytelling is unique, and his touch was all over the original game. Something to note is that he was not the only writer for the game, as others like Shuyo Murata had heavy involvement in the game's narrative. If other writers from the Metal Gear Solid series are penning the remake story, it could alleviate any lingering apprehensions that this will be a faithful remake regarding tone. But this has not yet been confirmed or denied. Recently, a Konami spokesperson talked about Hideo Kojima and his involvement with the Metal Gear Solid 3 Snake Eater remake. Unfortunately, the renowned director has been confirmed to not be involved in the remake's development. However, the spokesperson mentioned that the team will be working hard to uphold the legacy brought by his work, stating that it will work hard to create this remake and also the ports for Metal Gear Solid Master Collection, so that they can be enjoyed on multiple platforms by even more players all around the world. The Konami spokesperson also discussed the choice behind the project's name, Metal Gear Solid Delta Snake Eater. According to them, the Delta symbol, Delta, was chosen because its meaning fits the concept of the remake project. Delta is a character from the Greek alphabet that means change or difference in mathematics and variables, and also has the meaning of changing an amount without changing the structure. This means that the story in the game will not be altered. Metal Gear Solid 3 will retain the elements that made it resonate with many audiences. Another question that was asked involves the reasoning behind remaking Metal Gear Solid 3. The spokesperson explained that the decision came from how this title was the first game in the timeline that kicked off the story behind Metal Gear Solid as a series. They also talked about how this remake was, in fact, one of its most requested games for a long time, which further encouraged the decision. The possibility of other games in the series getting the remake treatment was also mentioned during the interview, with Konami being stated to be paying close attention to player demand, which will allow it to consider its approach accordingly. As such, whether there will be remakes of the first two games in the Metal Gear Solid series can be assumed to depend on Delta's reception. In a recent statement provided to IGN, a Konami spokesperson said that the company very much intends to listen to player demand for remakes of other games in the franchise besides Metal Gear Solid 3. In fact, the Japanese developer already started doing so, with its representative elaborating that this is exactly how Metal Gear Solid Delta happened. While some might have expected Konami to start remaking the series with MGS1, the fandom was apparently most eager to re-experience the origin story of Metal Gear's Big Boss, which serves as a prequel to all other games in the franchise. Based on that stated approach to revisiting the series, and assuming Metal Gear Solid Delta is positively received by the fandom, It's possible that Konami follows up on the upcoming game with a remake of Metal Gear Solid 4 Guns of the Patriots. The possibility that Konami turns to revisit MGS 4 after it finishes the Snake Eater remake is all the more likely because Guns of the Patriots is expected to be the only title missing from Metal Gear Solid Master Collection. Metal Gear Solid 3, Snake Eater is still one of the best examples of 6th-generation game design alongside other contemporaries like God of War and Resident Evil 4. Considering that many classics from the PS1 and PS2 eras are now receiving remakes. It was only a matter of time before Konami realized it was leaving money on the table without reviving the Metal Gear Solid franchise. In remaking one of the best titles from the series, it will be important for Konami to not reinvent the wheel or try to fix what wasn't broken. Metal Gear Solid Delta Snake Eater has an opportunity to introduce a whole new generation of players to the greatness of the original. Albeit with updated graphical fidelity and, hopefully, subtle changes to the game's interface and mechanics. MGS3's narrative is the gold standard of the series, and its gameplay still holds up as being enjoyable more than 15 years after its release. The name change from MGS3 to MGS Delta may be a simple way to entice new players alongside the dedicated series fans to play the remake, and there's hope that Konami won't change a winning team in the process. Metal Gear Solid Delta Snake Eater will be a grand reimagining of one of the mainline entries in the Metal Gear Solid franchise. Since the original game takes place before the other titles, it makes sense for Konami to start with this particular remake first. Regardless of its outcome, Metal Gear Solid Delta Snake Eater won't be the same as other Metal Gear titles Hideo Kojima was involved in. Whether it be a brand new IP or a sequel to an established franchise, Hideo Kojima makes it a point to leave his mark on every game he works on. Kojima demonstrated this creativity in his latest game, Death Stranding, with convoluted mysteries concerning BBs, bridge babies, BTs, beached things, and the grand phenomenon known as the Death Stranding itself. Death Stranding shows just how eccentric Hideo Kojima can get when he isn't pressured by time or the company he works for. But this doesn't mean his creativity was completely restricted back at Konami. Metal Gear Solid The Twin Snakes is a prime example of a remake with Hideo Kojima's flair. The game would have done well enough by using the same engine used in Metal Gear Solid 2 Sons of Liberty. But Kojima and his team went the extra mile and added more features and Easter eggs to whet GameCube owners' appetites. Showcasing a GameCube and Wavebird wireless controller in Otacon's office alludes to the game's release on the platform and Otacon's nature as an otaku. Likewise, certain features like the grip level were carried over from Metal Gear Solid 2 Sons of Liberty. Metal Gear Solid The Twin Snakes show how Kojima can make an old game feel new again aside from implementing the expected graphical improvements. Metal Gear Solid Delta Snake Eater might incorporate and refine the features of the original game. It might even add new things of its own, but the game just wouldn't be the same without Hideo Kojima's input. Now that Metal Gear's creator has nothing to do with the franchise, it will be interesting to see how Konami handles a Metal Gear entry. Considering that the derided Metal Gear Survive was the last release in the series, and the only glimpses of a Metal Gear Solid 3 remake were from pachinko machines, the current state of the Metal Gear franchise is looking more positive. Between Metal Gear Solid Delta and the slew of Silent Hill games announced by different developers, Konami is pushing to revive its beloved IPs. If it is successful, the company could be making a great return that restores some of gaming's former glory. For many fans, the latest PlayStation showcase was a bit of a mixed bag overall. While reveals like the Metal Gear Solid 3 remake, Marvel Spider-Man 2's gameplay trailer, and Phantom Blade X were all huge talking points. The vast majority of PlayStation's latest showcase lacked the same oomph, with a ton of re-reveals and CG trailers taking up the rest of the one-hour event. Generally speaking, the recent PlayStation showcase didn't deliver the same level of reveals that many fans had geared themselves up for, but this time it really isn't on the fans for getting overhyped. It's been 2 years since the last PlayStation showcase, and with barely any idea of what's up next for the publisher. It was more than fair to expect a showcase packed to the brim with exciting first-party releases. Now that the dust has started to settle, many fans are left with even more questions than they had before the showcase. Before PlayStation's latest showcase, fans had a rough idea of what they should expect to see. Over the last few years, Sony has been gradually acquiring more and more first-party studios, some of which have been quietly making a PlayStation exclusive for quite some time. This showcase finally felt like the time PlayStation was going to reveal these long-awaited games, but just 3 were shown. Studio Haven's brand new IP Fairgames, Firewalk's Concord, and Bungie's Marathon, all of which mark the start of PlayStation's next multiplayer-focused phase. But that's just scratching the surface of what PlayStation's first-party studios have in the works right now. Formed in 2012, Team Asobi has spent the last decade creating a handful of Astrobot games for PlayStation, and its current project is still completely under wraps. Similarly, Bend Studio, the team behind Siphon Filter and Days Gone, has also seemingly been working on a game for at least 3 years now, one which the public knows nothing about. Bluepoint Games, mostly known for phenomenal remakes like Shadow of the Colossus and Demon's Souls, is another first-party Sony studio that's presumably working on something big for the PS5, and another studio that fans expected to see during the recent PlayStation showcase. On top of those studios, Sony also has London Studio, Housemarque, Media Molecule, and Savage, all without currently announced projects. Even Ghost of Tsushima's Sucker Punch and God of War's Santa Monica do not have their next projects confirmed. With so many rumors circulating these studios over the past year or so, it's a little odd that they didn't show up at the showcase. Even if these studios only had a CG trailer to show, it's odd that PlayStation wouldn't want to show just that, as that didn't seem to stop it from showing Marathon, Fairgames, or Concord. The recent PlayStation showcase also had some noticeable absences from franchises that fans were pretty sure they would see. Established industry insider Tom Henderson subsequently took online to suggest that Sony has been holding back with the PlayStation showcase. Many of the titles from the event are pretty much ready, even though they are yet to be treated to gameplay reveals and release dates, Henderson reported on May 25. Soon thereafter, another known leaker known as The Snitch said they were surprised to see Sony choosing to omit several AAA games that are on the horizon from its PlayStation showcase lineup. Broadly speaking, the notion that a major publisher would hold back on announcing near-finished products isn't outside the realm of possibility. This was recently underlined by widespread reports that Nintendo has been sitting on Metroid Prime Remastered for years, with Fire Emblem Engage supposedly receiving similar treatment. Yet such a strategy is far from standard practice for Sony, who historically preferred longer marketing cycles. The overall lack of new release dates announced during the latest PlayStation showcase is another reason to doubt the claims that many of the games seen at the event are close to going gold. Unlike State of Play streams, PlayStation showcase broadcasts are a fairly rare occurrence usually reserved for Sony's biggest, most content-dense events. The last such stream prior to this month happened nearly 2 years ago, so the level of anticipation surrounding the May 24th showing was even higher than usual. Yet the event ended up being criticized by some of the fans for a multitude of reasons, including the revelation that many PlayStation showcase games are coming to Xbox. Known leaker Colin Moriarty subsequently said that this wasn't the last big showing that Sony had in store for 2023. During a May 28th episode of the Iron Lords podcast, Moriarty said a second PlayStation showcase is planned for later this year, citing industry sources. The insider added it was fairly obvious that Sony's looking to do another major event in 2023, speculating that its next big broadcast will be focused on detailing some of the recently unveiled PlayStation games instead of announcing new ones. His claims dovetail with multiple recent reports suggesting Sony was holding back with its last PlayStation showcase. And though his claim of another PlayStation showcase being on the horizon definitely holds some weight, Sony's ideal window to hold another 2023 event seems pretty narrow. The likeliest time for such a broadcast would be late summer or early fall. Though rumors should always be taken with a hefty pinch of salt, these don't seem too out of the realm of possibility for PlayStation considering the showcase's strange output. But if these rumors are true, then that points to one obvious conclusion: that PlayStation could end up hosting another showcase later in the year, revealing another handful of first-party and third-party projects that didn't make the cut this time around for whatever reason. I was heavily disappointed with the showcase, and I'm not even going to mention that abysmal Project Q handheld. Let's take a look at the Sony Games and Network Services numbers for 2023 and their future plans, which was revealed at a business meeting a week ago. They talked about PlayStation increasing its console business, expanding its IP towards TV shows, movies, theme parks and more, and increase Sony Group collaboration by using each other's technologies and combing Sony's assets. FY22 was really strong in revenue combined with content investment. Fiscal year 22 was a really strong year for Sony. Net sales were 3.6 trillion yen. PlayStation 5 continues to increase PlayStation revenue and increase sales. They've shown how the supply chain issues were resolved. PlayStation forecasts PlayStation 5 will overtake PlayStation 4 sales again in FY23 Q3 October-December 2023. PlayStation 5 has surpassed PlayStation 4 sales in Japan launch aligned, and PlayStation expects the PS5 to be the most successful and profitable console generation ever. March 2023 sell-through was the highest ever Q4 on record in the history of all PlayStation consoles. The demand remains too high. Mobile will see the most growth by any platform. PC and console will roughly remain the same size through December 2026. Add-on content is expected to make $19.2 billion, the most revenue in the console business by December 2026. This is for worldwide. PlayStation will look to increase total console revenue market share in the near future by over 50% through diversifying its portfolio. And they claim that PlayStation is the strongest brand in gaming. There are some games released, to be releasing, and third-party marketing partners. PS5 ongoing high engagement versus PS4 affirms that PlayStation Plus paid subscribers are higher, store purchases by users are higher. Gameplay: PlayStation consumers actually playing games on PS5, daily active users and monthly active users are much higher than PS4. PlayStation 5 engagement surrounding the platform remains high, higher than same time frame in PlayStation 4 lifecycle. 14.1 million PlayStation Plus subscribers have moved to a new higher tier. 30% of PlayStation Plus subscribers now subscribe to PlayStation Plus Extra/Premium. PlayStation is making billions from PlayStation accessories and seeing higher than ever PlayStation accessories growth. PlayStation VR 2 has sold around 600,000 units in the first 6 weeks of launch. While exact figures weren't shared, the PSVR 2 sold 8% more than the original PSVR during its first 6 weeks, Sony showed. On the graph, the line for the PSVR 2 gets very close to the 600,000 units milestone, while the PSVR 1 sits in between the 500,000 and the 600,000 marks. PlayStation VR 2 is selling faster than PlayStation VR. This is seriously impressive as it only launched on PlayStation Direct in certain regions. With PlayStation VR 2 launching in retail stores and online retailers, the number will get a massive boost. PlayStation and Bungie collaboration will increase in the coming months and years. PlayStation and Bungie investing gaming heavily. Both companies will help each other reach their own targets. PlayStation will invest in new intellectual property. By fiscal year 25, PlayStation will invest 50% of its investment into new IPs. PlayStation expects this to help return on investment. Right now, Sony may be widely renowned for its ambitious single-player PlayStation games from franchises you've come to know and love, series like God of War, Horizon, and Spider-Man. But in just a few years, you might instead be playing a lot of new PlayStation franchises and a lot of live service titles. The changes could be even more notable for how Sony invests in what it calls traditional games and live service ones. In FY19, the split was 88% traditional games to 12% live service games, but in FY25, Sony expects that ratio to flip to 40/60. During the presentation, PlayStation Studios head Hermen Hulst said that Sony currently has 12 live service games in production, a number that Sony has shared in the past. If you've been following PlayStation's moves over the past few years, these shifts shouldn't come as too much of a surprise. Sony has made some major acquisitions in studios working on big live service titles, including Bungie, Jade Raymond's Haven Studios, and Firewalk Studios. And Horizon franchise developer Guerrilla Games has already said that it's working on a multiplayer Horizon game. It is a pathetic move to get those Fortnite, Candy Crush money. Single-player games continues to get less and less investment. We gotta look at some of those new franchises or live service games at Sony's PlayStation Showcase on Wednesday. We'll discuss this as detail in my next topic covering Naughty Dog shortly, so stay with me. PlayStation is expecting PC revenue to be $450 million in FY23. PlayStation is in the top 20 publishers on PC and is expecting 20% of first-party games unit volume to be sold on PC. PlayStation Network will be integrating to PC more and more. Marvel Spider-Man has sold over 1.5 million copies and The Last of Us Part 1 has sold over 368k copies on PC, which are decent numbers but not impressive. PlayStation first-party portfolio will look drastically different by fiscal year 2025/March 2026. More and more games made by PlayStation Studios brand/name will be on PC and mobile. PlayStation aims to release 2 or more games per year, with a mix of single-player and live service with old and new IP titles going forward. Sony shared its financial results for FY22 in late April, with PS5 shipping 19 million units in the financial year and games revenues being up 33% to $26.5 billion. This is their complete setup for PlayStation's future. Sony is reportedly planning to bolster its PlayStation division further by acquiring more studios. Sony has been on acquisition spree over the past 2 years, and it is seemingly looking for more studios to boost its position in the global gaming market. There has been a visible move towards consolidation in the video game industry considering the high-profile acquisitions that were completed recently. For instance, Microsoft acquired ZeniMax and a number of other studios, with Sony following suit by acquiring 5 studios in 2021 alone. However, the Japanese tech giant's most significant acquisition came in 2022 when Sony acquired Destiny 2 and former Halo developer Bungie for $3.6 billion. Now the conglomerate is looking to reinforce its position globally by allocating more funds for more such acquisitions. As reported by the Financial Times, Sony is considering a partial spin-off for its financial services business to focus on its entertainment and image sensor offerings. For those unaware, a partial spin-off is where the parent company decides to publicly list a subsidiary, but retains a minor stake in it, usually to raise more capital. Sony President Hiroki Totoki addressed this at a news conference and said, "In order to expand our growth over the medium to longer term, we will need the ability to invest in image sensors and the entertainment business at a completely new level." Many believe that Sony is doing this to compete against Microsoft, who has also doubled down on acquisitions over the last 2 years. While Sony has been vocal in its stance against the proposed Microsoft Activision acquisition due to fear over the future of Call of Duty on PlayStation, it looks to be adopting a different strategy now. Gamers also believe that this pivot comes due to the recent regulatory approvals Microsoft has received, which probably got Sony thinking about its next step to deal with the global competition. It is now looking to strengthen its position financially to be able to make investments in its key growth areas. Sony has also been making a transmedia push with its IPs, with the Uncharted movie and HBO's The Last of Us TV show seeing immense success. It has already started work with Amazon on a God of War show, a Gran Turismo movie is nearing release, and Netflix is working on a Horizon TV show as well. With more funds for expansion, Sony will look to continue its transmedia push, and will possibly double down on adaptations for its other IPs. While many fans were hopeful that Naughty Dog would provide an update on its The Last of Us multiplayer game at the recent PlayStation showcase, it unfortunately did not make an appearance. To make matters worse, the developer released a statement notifying fans that The Last of Us multiplayer title has been internally delayed and that they would need more time before it's ready to be revealed. As disappointing as this is to hear, the writing has been on the wall for this game for some time. Naughty Dog first teased the existence of a Last of Us multiplayer spin-off game back in summer 2022. But little information has been shared since, and fans were initially hopeful when co-president of Naughty Dog Neil Druckmann stated in early 2023 that they would be sharing more information about the game later this year. However, this recent announcement of a delay has put a damper on some of the hype for the franchise following The Last of Us' successful HBO series. With The Last of Us Part 2 being released in 2020, one would expect a studio of the size and renown of Naughty Dog to have something to show from its next major title 3 years later. However, the release of The Last of Us Part 2 was followed by allegations that developers were being forced to crunch to meet deadlines for the game, which didn't sit right with many fans. In the time since, Naughty Dog has committed to changing its culture surrounding crunch for development on its games, meaning that future projects from the developer will likely take more time as a result. As reported by Bloomberg, sources familiar with the matter said that the decision comes as the studio's title was re-evaluated in terms of quality and viability. The evaluation led by Sony subsidiary, Bungie, questioned the Naughty Dog title's long-time engagement with users. Following the assessment, staff working on the online game were reduced to a now small team, and other developers were reassigned to different roles. The studio said, "We know many of you have been looking forward to hearing more about our The Last of Us multiplayer game. We're incredibly proud of the job our studio has done thus far, but as development has continued, we've realized what is best for the game is to give it more time." The announcement also included the news that it has begun working on a new single-player title. "Our team will continue to work on the project, as well as our other games in development, including a brand new single-player experience. We look forward to sharing more soon," Naughty Dog added. Cutting down the number of developers on the project doesn't necessarily spell doom for the game, but it does make it more likely that the game will face a longer development cycle. Other rumors suggest that Naughty Dog has delayed the game as it works to reassess the project's long-term viability, which could imply that the studio was unhappy with the current direction of the game and is overhauling certain aspects of it to fit its standards. With this project likely being The Last of Us Part 3, it's understandable why developers could be shifted away from a spin-off title to focus more resources on the next mainline entry in the series. Given Naughty Dog's identity as a developer of excellent single-player games, it's no surprise that the studio would want the majority of its talent working on the type of game that the studio excels at. When it comes to big-budget, AAA, narrative-driven gaming, few other names are as synonymous with the genre as PlayStation. For practically the entirety of the brand's history, the company has released single-player franchises that gave Nintendo a run for its money. Each generation of PlayStation introduced something special to players, from God of War and Ratchet Clank on PS2 to Uncharted and The Last of Us on PS3 to Horizon and Ghost of Tsushima on PS4 and so many others. High-quality single-player adventures have been the bread and butter for PlayStation for years now, and fans have always come to expect more of this as the years have gone on. However, in the last few years the CEO of PlayStation, Jim Ryan, has encouraged a shift towards more live-service gaming, tasking many first-party studios with developing new multiplayer experiences to put on the platform. Also, recent reports seem to indicate that the live-service model has taken center stage. This past week, the PlayStation Showcase caused some disappointment among fans who expected a little bit more to be in attendance, particularly from first-party studios. Naughty Dog's long-in-development The Last of Us multiplayer project was among the titles that seemed the most likely to show up, especially considering the numerous years it has been in production. It not being there was puzzling, to say the least, but concerns began to seep in when an official report from Naughty Dog explained that the game would need to be delayed, requiring more time to be the best it can be. As to the exact reason for the delay, a report from Bloomberg claims that it's due to quality and long-term viability concerns. In other words, live-service titles are designed to be monetized and keep players coming back to play the game. It seems Sony's plan is to pivot more into this live-service game model as a means to ensure consistent revenue from a number of live-service games, as opposed to just relying on one lump sum from its exclusive games, of which only 2 or 3 normally launch in 1 year. Meanwhile, another PlayStation first-party studio is also experiencing similar setbacks. Deviation Games was acquired to work on a brand new first-person shooter for PS5. Similar to The Last of Us multiplayer, this game had also been in the works for some time, with no proper updates for fans to get a glimpse at what was being worked on. This past week, however, there was an update, but not the kind that players would have liked to hear. Allegedly, according to insiders, Deviation Games' upcoming game could have been quietly cancelled, weeks after reports of numerous layoffs within the studio. This also follows the news story about Deviation Games co-founder Jason Blundell leaving the company in late 2022, without much explanation as to why. Now, with the rumors of the game being cancelled, theories claim that Blundell didn't share the direction of the game's development and chose to depart. But there was no official statement regarding the game's alleged cancellation and its possible link with Blundell leaving. Coupled with the reports of PlayStation recently shutting down Pixel Opus, the team behind the beloved Concrete Genie, it begins to paint the picture of a worrisome trend. PlayStation used to be praised for how it allowed its studios to be creative and craft unique experiences. Ghost of Tsushima, Marvel's Spider-Man, and Sly Cooper are all symbolic of this track record for delivering story-driven games meant to be remembered for years due to their artistic merits. Yet, it seems like PlayStation may have bitten off more than it can chew in this scenario, as all its eggs are in one basket in an attempt to catch lightning in a bottle with at least a handful of the planned live service games in production. This could be a huge gamble for a company previously recognized for its single-player games, which I would rather see take center stage again. The recent controversy regarding Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League's live service elements may have scared PlayStation into not wanting to repeat the same mistakes. This has led to the company seemingly questioning the talent of Naughty Dog, a studio that has brought them countless acclaimed games ever since the PS1 era of gaming. Hopefully, this is just a bump in the road during the switch to more live service titles, as PlayStation learns the many ins and outs of this kind of game development. Guerrilla Games is also reportedly hard at work on a live service multiplayer spin-off based on Horizon games. The PlayStation brand still has plenty of high-profile releases like Marvel's Spider-Man 2 and Death Stranding 2 in the works, however, and they seem to stray from the live service model, which is a good sign that the future of the company is not exclusively tied to multiplayer titles. It is concerning that, if these games become successful, it's gonna take away resources from single-player games, which is already clear after seeing those charts, and the resources will be shrinking on the single-player side if these live service games become successful. I don't want PlayStation to turn into Epic Games and Valve. After the success of Fortnite, Rocket League, CSGO, Dota and many GAAS games, they completely abandoned the single-player games offering for in-house. And therefore I don't want any of these live service games to be successful. It'll lead to a worse future for gaming. I'll be glad if all of these live service games shuts down tomorrow and microtransactions are banned forever. On the flip side, if these games do fail, PlayStation might take a major hit with its finances. But they'll realize they can't capture the live service market and allocate more resources to the single-player projects. They've overcome the PS3 launch, and I'm sure they can overcome this one. A future dominated by GAAS live service games is the destruction of gaming that's been piling up since 2013. And that's all for the video, guys. Like and share the video for a greater audience. Comment your thoughts on the topics, and donations are always appreciated. Subscribe to the channel and click the bell icon, and until then from SMPV, it's goodbye.